This video is to review factoring trinomials. So we're going to factor this trinomial, and we want to remember the number one rule of factoring, which is always to take out the greatest common factor, or the biggest thing that can go into all three things, or however many terms you have in what you're trying to factor. So in this case, the largest thing that I can take out of all of these is 5. So I'm dividing each of these terms by 5. And that's going to leave me with 8x squared minus 9x minus 14. Okay, what's important is not to drop this 5. It's still part of your answer, and it's important to keep it there. Okay, from here, in order to factor what's left on the inside, okay, we multiply the first number, or your first coefficient, by your last number. So in this problem, I'm multiplying 8 times a negative 14, which gives me negative 112. So I'm trying to find numbers that multiply to give me negative 112 and add to give me negative 109. So what you should do is, if that doesn't occur to you, you should really use your calculator as an advantage to you. And you should go to the graphing part of your calculator and you should type negative 112 divided by x into your calculator. Now I'm using a TI Inspire. If you don't use a TI Inspire, make sure you're comfortable using your graphing calculator. Okay, you hit enter. Now you're not going to see anything, that's not the important part, but what you want to do is hit Control T, or bring up your table of values. Now remember, we're trying to find numbers that add up to give us negative 9. So I'm going to scroll through the table of values until I find numbers that are going to add to give me negative 9. Okay, so that's 7 and negative 16. So if you want to try that on your calculator, if you don't believe the table of values, go for it. But I promise you that negative 16 times 7 will give you negative 112. And also negative 16 plus 7 also add to give us negative 9. So what we're doing here is we're going to rewrite our trinomial, or what's inside the parentheses, as 8x squared minus 16x plus 7x minus 14. Okay, what we've done essentially is split up this negative 9x into two things, negative 16x plus 7x. It's kind of the opposite of combining like terms. We've split it up into two things that's going to allow us to be able to factor. Okay, now this 5 doesn't go away, but I always write it in parentheses so I don't get it confused with anything else that I'm doing. Okay, and now I'm grouping these two terms together and these two terms together. So now I look at 8x squared minus 16x, and I'm taking out the largest thing I can take out of them. So in this case, that's 2x, which means I'm being left with, oh, excuse me, I can take out much more than 2x here. I can take out 8x. So if I take out 8x, I'm left with x minus 2. And I do the same thing for the last two terms. I can take out a positive 7. And it's important to note the sign there. And what should happen is that I'm left with exactly the same thing here, x minus 2, as I was left with over here. Okay, so notice that this x minus 2 and this x minus 2 are the same. And that will always happen as long as you factored correctly. If that doesn't happen, then that means you've made a mistake somewhere along the line and you should backtrack. So now, these things put together are 8x plus 7, because I'm putting together this with this, and then what I've highlighted in yellow, the x minus 2. But you only write it once. Okay, now I can't forget about my 5. So what I started off with, the 40x squared minus 45x minus 7, factors to give me these three things right here. So this would be my final answer. Now remember that sometimes on the SOL they just ask us for one factor. So it might just be the 8x plus 7 or the x minus 2. We're not quite sure. If you have more questions about factoring, please see your math teacher.